You are all welcome to this Nigeria program this afternoon. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this side event on scaling up land revitalization through large-scale LDN bankable investments and tracking progress on ground from the space. Nigeria is among the 102 country parties to the UNCCD that set targets in 2017 for achieving LDN by 2030. That year, Nigeria also pledged to restore 4 million hectares of degraded landscape under the AFRO 100 initiative. Nigeria also is among the Great Green Wall countries, building a green wall of trees to stop the advancement of the Sahara Desert southwards. Besides, there are various restoration projects and programs going on at the national and subnational levels. To achieve LDN and meet Nigeria's commitment on restoration and also to achieve Great Green Wall objective, investment in large-scale bankable projects by the government and the private sector is critical. Towards this end, the Nigeria government is also involving with the private sector, NGOs, to facilitate restoration efforts in the country. To achieve LDN and meet Nigerian commitments on restoration and also to achieve the Great Green Wall objective, investment in large-scale bankable projects by government and the private sector is critical. Towards this end, the Nigeria government is also involving the private sector, NGOs, to facilitate the restoration efforts in the country. The funds required for this restoration project are huge, and hence they need to exploit different funding sources. The government cannot do it alone. I understand that one of the panel discussions this afternoon will be on mobilization of funds, the way forward on this issue. Tracking progress of restoration is important for both implementers and funders of the projects. One of the panel discussions this afternoon will be on monitoring of the progress of restoration from the space. This system of monitoring eliminates doubts in the minds of donors and investors, as satellite images cannot be easily manipulated. I would like to acknowledge our development partners here present, with special thanks to partners in the side events. Foundation Collective Consortium, to Mr. Elaine Ritera for the efforts in ensuring that these events holds. Thanks to Prometheus, Climate and Company, NISA, and the Green Sahara Farms. Your participation in ensuring that Nigeria mobilizes funds for large-scale restoration activities and efforts to raise our awareness on available digital tools for monitoring of progress of restoration projects on the ground from space would be highly welcome. I wish to welcome you all to this very important event. Your ideas and suggestions that will contribute to the success of this side events would be important to Nigeria efforts at mobilization of funds for restoration and tracking degraded landscape restoration progress using the satellites. On this note, I wish you all a fruitful side event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mabel. So now I would like to call the participant of the first panel, and if you can come to moderate. Mr. Bala Bukut from the Ministry of Environment of Nigeria.
Am I moderating?
So you can invite the participants.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, do I have their names?
Yes, I do. You should have.
I don't have their names. Okay, I want to invite Mr. Oliver as one of the... Here you can go. Yeah. Okay. Fabio Parisi, come over.
Thank you.
Is he around? Fabio? No. I won't be sitting. John? Johan Fogjo? Come over here. Let me sit down. Maimuna? I was sitting there, but okay. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to this our side event. We are happy to see you here. Before me here are 4 discussants. We are going to have 2 panel discussions. This is the first panel discussion, which will be centering on restoration and finance. And to set the ball running, we want the panelists to introduce themselves and then give us a little brief of what they do. Because this is just an introduction. The first one is an introduction. Then after the introduction, then I will take you up one by one on what you have on the table for us. So thank you. Let me start with the ladies first.
No problem. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Najabi, and I am working with the Great Green Wall Frontline, which is and the African Union. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Johan Fourgeau. I'm investment director for Mirova, and we are managing several funds, and one is called the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund. I will give you more detail about that later.
Good afternoon everybody. My name is Fabio Ferrari. I am the founder of Adriada. Adriada develops and invest in large-scale projects that protect and restore biodiversity. I will come back on that.
Hello, my name is Oliver Herrmann. I'm partner at Climate & Company. Climate & Company is what is called a sustainable think tank for finance. So we are looking at how to make actually finance, the world of finance, capital, available for sustainable investment, sustainable activities. And there's a huge gap because usually you don't know an activity, is it really sustainable or not? If you have a product, say yesterday we had the presentation by Mirova, cocoa or rubber or whatever, you don't see immediately whether it was produced in a sustainable way. But if you can have a system which allows the product to be certified or to be traced or by other means, and you know this is now a sustainable activity or a sustainable product, then the financial world is much more inclined to invest and make capital available. And this is what our think tank is about. We want to bring both worlds together. We consider ourselves bridge builders, so not like Mirova, we are not running a fund per se, but we want to bridge the world between the financial world, who wants to do good things too, and those on the ground, like a lot of your project developers in the house, who know, well, we are doing good things. Our activities is sustainable activity, is sustainable products. And this is where climate and company comes together. And there's also un jeu de mots, playing with words. You are in good company with us, but we also want to work with companies, and we want to make sure investment is financed through the financial world. So that is what Climate and Company stands for. And we will hear about the different projects and the different elements which is needed. It's literally bridging from the financing, the beginning of the pipeline, to the end of the pipeline, selling sustainable products on the world market or within a country, doesn't matter. So happy to be here.
So thank you for introducing yourselves. So like I said, this is the first panel discussion we are going to be having, and it's going to center on means of achieving restoration. And there are bullet points here that our discussants will concentrate on. I will read them out. I don't need to come and tell you that this bullet point you should take. But as the microphone comes, then you take on your own part. So these are the things that will be discussed. The topics covered are the GGW umbrella program. The second one is nature-based solutions impact funds. The third one is the long-term contract agriculture. Then LDN transformative investment approach as social and environmental impact contracts. The next will be civil society organizations and networks of organizations. Then the last bullet point will be the climate finance opportunities and requirements. So, again, I'll start with the lady. Go on.
So I would assume I'll be talking on the Great Green Wall flagship project. So for the Great Green Wall frontline, what we're doing in the northern part of the Gambia as a pilot project before extending to all the other 11 countries of the Great Green Wall Initiative, which is a restoration of 8,000 kilometers of trees along the Sahel from Senegal to Djibouti. So what we believe and why there's a need for the front line is by the front line we mean the participation of the women, the rural farmers and etc., the people in the community. Because we believe the Great Green Wall is the most audacious project on climate change in the world, which have been agreed on, but only 18% have been completed in the past 10 years. And we don't have much time towards climate action, given how the Sahel is suffering from climate impacts. We contribute less than 1% to climate carbon emission, but yet we're suffering 80% of the impacts without the resources to actually mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. So what we do is, how do we bring the power through mindset? We bring the resources and the money to the communities and be able to share models through storytelling. How do we use digital means? How do we use even local communication means to help people understand the Great Green Wall movement? Because if we're talking about planting 8,000 of trees, we cannot do it in formal symposiums all the time. We cannot do it in political scenes. And that is where the Great Green Wall have been for the past 10 years. So what we're doing, we're taking the initiative and putting it back into the hands of the people. And we're doing this through a series of approaches. And one thing I would like to highlight here is that the Frontline is not a political bureau. It's not an organization. It's idea and we are accelerating, we're experimenting. And even if these models we're implementing, even if they don't work, the advantage or upper hand we have is that we are trying these things out and we want them to work. And if it doesn't work, we will change it. That is the energy we have, that is the passion we have, and that is what we're willing to do that have never been done in a way. So some of these approaches are using local leadership and community solutions on the ground, because we know tapping into indigenous knowledge have been a key conversation in the global climate talks. So what we're doing is going to the communities instead of them coming to us, realizing the community, the people's not having capacities to write proposals or even having the literal capacities for some of these things. Yet when projects come, we see the offices, we see the requests for proposals, and the community farmers cannot do this if we really want them to participate. So what we do is that we're building restoration blueprints with these communities, because whatever we are saying and whatever we're doing, we want it to be documented. So we're also creating content to ensure whenever, whatever generations comes, and since it's the first time, anyone that wants to replicate this model could always have a reference. So we're building community blueprints, which are maps, and it brings out the solutions or identify the places that these communities want their trees to be planted, for one. This also is having social enterprises and businesses they want to venture in, because one of the aims of the Great Green Wall is to create 100 million jobs towards the end. So how do we do that is, how do we teach the people to sustainably use the forest, or even learn from the models that are existing in their communities. So they're going to use these social enterprises to ensure there is sustainability and community ownership of the initiative. And of course, we replicate our grandmother storytelling methods, whereby we have a solar van that we use to host community screenings of documentaries and these movies that we're producing, and we have informal discussions with the communities every night per village. The North Bank of the Gambia that we are in has 7 districts, and each of those 7 districts would have at least 50 to 60 villages. And every night we take the solar van, which is equipped with projectors, all other facilities you will find in an office, but it's solar powered, and we can go to the remotest village and be able to do a training, documentary screening, or whatever you want to do with digital means. And of course, we also host local climate assemblies, whereby we're using traditional means of communication. We're using the leadership of the chiefs and the alcalos, and we're bringing about 600 to 1,000 people in a day to be able to discuss these blueprints that a 30-member committee has already developed on their behalf. And now the villagers, down to the youngest person, is having a say in these blueprints. And of course, it's accompanied by masquerades. And as we know, our culture and tradition plays a vital role if we really want people to be involved in whatever we're doing. And we hope all of these efforts are now going to lead towards the bigger picture, which is making sure these blueprints now gets the involvement of policymakers, gets the involvement of all stakeholders. Because we're saying, okay, let's have less of the talks, let's have less of the formal events, and let's go back to the ground. But also there's realities on the ground that policies really have an effect on, especially when it comes to gender issues and climate change, economic issues and climate change, and importantly, land ownership, because we're talking about planting trees. People are giving us their personal lands, but there's also community lands available that sometimes we don't have access to. So we need to really make sure these things are discussed. And out of the conversation from some of the things that are coming up is the women in the Gambia make up 80% of the agricultural sector, but they hold less than 10% of land ownership. And one of the most contributing factors is that even though some of them, if they inherit land, sometimes the girl child doesn't even inherit land. But even if you do, when you get married, you lost your land to go when you go to your husband's village. So this is happening, but yet they farming throughout the year and they don't have any ownership to land. So we hope by bringing conversation around certain things like this would be able to help increase productivity and be able to also provide alternative sources of income, because we know our lands are degraded. The Gambia, the rice production has gone down by 80% now because of the high salinity rate in the tributaries that the women farm. So we hope by providing alternative sources of income like tie and dye, poultry, the like, even ram fattening, people are requesting for these, and even tourism, ecotourism in the James Island, that is in Jufure, where we're working at also, to be able to give a new perspective and hopefully a more sustainable means of achieving the Great Green Wall, and of course having the economic benefits that come with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will give you some historical perspective on the creation of this LDN fund that we are managing at Mirova. First, a word on Mirova. So Mirova is an asset manager in France, linked to the Natixis BPCE group of bank. That is number 3 group of bank in France, and one big in Europe too. And this group has decided to create an entity called Mirova to dedicate 100% to impact investing. First, Mirova started to invest in renewable energy in France and Europe, and it is one of the leaders in terms of funds invested in this sector. Historically, also Mirova has invested in green bonds and social bonds, so more in the listed market. And more recently, around the 2016, Mirova has decided to do a first step in the natural capital space, looking to develop funds and instruments to support nature-based solutions and projects that contribute to environmental positive impact and reducing the degradation of lands. Mirova at the time had no long experience in the sector. It was an emerging sector and etc. So the first thing that we decided to do is to partner, and we met some people from the global mechanism of UNCCD. And on that, Alain, you have more memory than I do. We at the time, UNCCD was the global mechanism that was looking for a solution from the private sector to support projects of the private sector. And the idea was the first one was how to mobilize the money from the private sector, and the second one was, of course, how to support projects from the private sector. So Mirova has been selected to think of that and find solution. And so we, between 2018 and 2021, we managed to raise funds around 210 million from private sector in Europe, but not only. Basically, corporates, large group of banks as Mirova and others, insurance company, and also some DFIs that were thinking that it could be catalytic to also inject the money. So what we decided to do, it's a fund with a layer structure where we have 2 categories of shares. And a part of the investment from the DFIs, it's like a grant money, and it's protecting, in fact, the performance of the others. So it's a bit technical, and it's about structuring a fund, but I think it's important to underline that this fund has been created thanks to public money as well. So after this period of fundraising and structuring, we were able to deploy the fund and looking for projects. So we receive many projects, like around 150. Many were arrive from the focal points, from the network of the UNCCD, but not only. We receive also projects from the partners of Mirova and in the network of Mirova. And we select a few of them that were a bit mature and ready for investment. And I think that's my key message. It's difficult as a fund manager like us to find a bankable project that have the capacity to receive money and to repay back, because unfortunately with this fund it's only debt investment or equity investment, so we need to have a certain level of return, but also of course to have strong impact and strong integrity and contributes to the LDN targets of each countries and more generally about sustainable land management in each countries. So we really have put in place high standard, high criteria, and etc. And thankfully, we invest so far in 9 projects. 3 of them are in Africa, 3 are in Latin America, and 3 in Asia. So we are well spread. We only invest in ODA countries. And just to give you an idea, the average ticket size that we do for a project is around 10 million USD. So it's a big investment, a big budget. We are really able to support like small projects and help them to scale, but the fundamentals need to be strong. And when I say fundamentals, is of course the technical parts, agronomy, or forestry if it is, the processing side, the link with the market. So it's very important that we have a project with an off-taker, international off-takers. And what you were saying is very true. If there is a certification, it's very good because it's the margin higher because there is a premium and etc. But the most important thing is to have like an entrepreneur that taking the risk with us and where we are fully aligned with him. And sometimes and on the project that we received so far, many projects has been promoted by public policies and etc. And it's difficult to have the entrepreneur that will be in a mindset of growing with a company. So it's a bit maybe for the discussion too private sector oriented, but it's the solution that we are developing. And just to complete, so LDN is one of the funds that we are managing, but there is others. We are developing also funds that are more linked to payment for ecosystem services and with the RED Plus carbon dimension. And that is very useful for smaller projects or non-mature projects where we can pay the development costs thanks to the carbon revenues. And so those funds, we are one, it's mandate that we receive from corporates, and just to name them, one fund is from the money of L'Oréal, and the other one, so the French cosmetic group, and the other one is with Orange, the telecom company, and it's part of their sustainable department and etc. I'll stop there, but I'll be happy to complete with question after.
Thank you. So I created Adriada a few years ago to protect biodiversity. And the best way to protect biodiversity is to take care of wild areas like forest. When you do that, you have to be in line with government strategies on forest, on deforestation and things like that. You have also to work with communities. If you do this kind of project without communities, you're sure that after a few years we'll have problems on your forest. And what we want is to have a long-term secured protection on biodiversity. The good news is when you do that, you generate high level of quality in carbon credits. I mean high level of quality because it avoids any risk of greenwashing. You know that today these carbon credits are today attacked because people think that it's only greenwashing. And this is not the case when it definitely helps to protect biodiversity and avoid deforestation. If you do it with communities, it also improves the social issues that you may have on the territories that you are, where you are playing when you are deploying this project. You improve the quality of life, you develop infrastructure, you create jobs, and this is also very important, once again, to have this high level of quality. You also avoid any problems of additionality. These carbon credits are only created for biodiversity, so it's not something that you be sure that no one will say that these carbon credits maybe have been paid, or this project maybe have been paid by another thing. And the last thing, I said that we are working with governments. For us, it's very important. It avoids the risk of double counting. If you work with governments, the carbon credit will be only for your project. You will avoid to have credits counted for the government and credit counted for the project. The other good news is when you do that, this high level of quality of carbon credits creates a good business model. You're able to sell these carbon credits to companies. Lots of companies today want to be net zero, and to achieve this goal, they are ready to buy high-level quality carbon credits at the right price. Selling these carbon credits with a long-term purchase agreement give a good off-takers, as we just said. So it enables a good business model with a good return. And this is one key element that will reassure large investors to go in this kind of project, and this is also what we do. So as Adriada, we first develop this kind of project, and then we fund it through large investors to protect this or to recreate this biodiversity. And for us, it is one good way to reach the objective of COP21, the 1.5 degree objective. It will definitely capture a lot of CO2. It will improve the social life of people, and it will create a flow of money coming from the north state to the south state. And this is also very important. I will stop there, and I will be happy to answer questions on this topic.
Yeah, so you heard from the three other panelists, so Muma and focused on the Great Green Wall, the initiatives, and you know all that. And Johan and Fabio focused a bit more on, well, how to set up a fund that really makes it happen. I will focus a bit also on this and try to give you the big picture. And as Fabio said, and also Johan, private funds are necessary. Why? Because on the one hand, the public funds are not that much available, so you need to have the private business in there. But the private business is also interesting for two reasons. They will insist on that there is a good business case for the different projects. And that gives a bit of pressure of looking at really good projects which have a good pipeline from products which come close to the market or are mature on the market. On the other hand, the private sector will also be required on the other hand, and here I give you an example of the European Union will adopt soon a law which says, all products that are imported into the European Union must be proven that they are not causing deforestation. And that is called even for the suppliers, so it's called the deforestation-free supply chain. So take the example, if a big company, Renault or a German producer of whatever, it has to show also that its suppliers are complying with deforestation-free products. So that will put a lot of pressure on suppliers, importers, to show actually that projects like yours They are actually maintaining a good quality of landscapes, of forests, of natural habitats, of biodiversity. So there will be pressure from the market on all these companies, and the investors know that, and they will ask, oh, why not already do this now? Ask for, approve that the sourcing is from sustainable land use. And that is where we come to Le Collectif, which is a network of 9 companies who actually cover all these elements, from tracing, from monitoring, from putting together the business plan and the business case and the financing to really to the end of the pipeline. And that is where we think the advantage is of having and scaling up these type of projects. And that is where I'm convinced that pooling together these skills and qualities we have in the network is essential. You will learn much more in the second panel on how they do it. I'm not an engineer, I cannot explain it, but I'm always excited when the colleagues show the pictures of the satellites and the massive amount of data which can be processed and made for good use. So this is the last point I want to make. We can do this, and we've proven this, and this is why we are working. We have this panel together with the various experts who have already put together an impact fund or using funds of this, but showing also that we can deliver this, and that is the practical aspects of it. Thank you very much.
Hello. Well, thank you very much, panelists. Now it's time for questions. Do we have questions from the audience? Okay. Yes,
I have a question about certification. You all mentioned, especially the finance colleague, the importance of the certification. In many cases, in my experience, my humble experience of a field worker, I've been looking at many of those certification reports and find conclusions sometimes not really at standard. But having a certificate seems to be good enough. Do you, in the finance sector, have similar questioning about those existing certification systems, and how do you see a need for improving the standards, and in particular to use better technologies for that? And what about the satellite imageries that have been referred to also in your interventions? Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Alain. For me, the certification, it's, as you say, it's not the answer for all, and it's not ideal. There is some good things, and the certification doesn't respond to all the issues. But as an investor, having certification in a project has several gives several strength to the project. First, it means that there is a strong connection with the off-tech world. Could be with the commodities, so coffee, cocoa, if we are speaking of UTZ rainforest, or fair trade, or etc., or biological production, so organic production. So if you have this certification, you know that that you have the market that will pay a premium. So that's one. You know also that your margin will be higher, of course, and also you know that that you have an independent body that will audit the activity once a year or once every 2 years. So that's very comforting for from an investor perspective. And I didn't present that in my initial presentation, but of course the project that we are supporting have also activities in the carbon field as well. So they are selling carbon credits. And in the same perspective, now everybody is claiming for carbon sequestration and etc. Having this independent body, could be Vera, could be Gold Standard or such, that coming to the project, checking the way that the carbon is registered, sequestered, and etc., and emit the certificate. That's very very important to avoid any double counting and etc. So it's not answering to all, but it's I think it's better than nothing. And last thing, as Mirova for fund, we select a few standards that we think are the most relevant. So we've done a sort of benchmark of those, and we really promote them, in fact, to the project developer, and that's very useful, I think.
Maybe just to add a few words on that. For me, a certification is a framework. Just to give you an example, all the cars that are today on the road are certified. It doesn't mean that they have all the same level of quality. It means that at least you have something that can help you to compare one car to another. For example, the car consumption. For example, the car security. And for carbon certificates, for this kind of project, it's the same approach. At least you have something that you decide that is good to compare from one project to another. It means that at the end, it will be a competition of quality. And the customer will choose if he wants something at low quality or high quality, but at least he will be able to choose what he wants.
And maybe I will add something. In Nigeria or in Côte d'Ivoire, the cocoa industry is developing and growing a lot, a bit more in the past for Côte d'Ivoire, but actually in Nigeria. And now, thanks to the certification, the off-takers are really looking for full traceability of their cocoa and asking the producer organization to map all the area of production to make sure that no cocoa is planted in protected forest and etc. So I think those sort of examples show that the standards are very useful.
Thank you. Will you like to, the last person there, talk on certification? Because in the course of your discussion, you are talking of a deforestation-free value chain. Is there anything in the course of the proposals that has to do with certification?
Yeah, interesting question. It's definitely part of it, but it will probably even be more than just certification. Well, I don't say just certification, but there will be several of methods of proving really that products and the supply chain of these products are really coming out of deforestation-free activities. That's the requirement. The big question will be the how that will be proven. And as I said before, within the collective and with satellite and remote sensing images, you probably are very close already to the proof and saying, yeah, this cannot be manipulated, as the honorable representative of the ministry said. Yeah, some things are then ground truth that cannot be manipulated, and that is the way ahead of doing it. So that even, and there I see a huge potential for countries in Africa, but also worldwide, who can already be compliant with that requirement already maybe in the course of the next year. They will have a head start. All of these type of projects will have a head start and be ahead of the curve, and can already prove what it means actually to have a deforestation-free, in this example, products.
Good afternoon. My question is still a follow-up to Alan's question in terms of certification. For instance, in the agro aspect of agroforestry interventions, or should I say enterprise, some global companies have looked at, because there's the issue of affordability, and you all spoke about the issue of working more with entrepreneurs than actually government interventions and all that. So I'm aware that from the agro aspect of it, some food and beverages companies in Europe especially are saying, well, this label that I get, actually I'm not even sure. I'm just paying a lot of money for a label that says this is green, this is organic, and this is that. So why not let's reimagine this and go into direct interventions and playing along the value chain, which will enable scale, because by doing that, they're directly involved in developing the value chain and directly involved in their supply chain, which in analysis, you look at, it tends even to be cheaper than paying a recognized institution or a labeling company, so to say, in terms of certification. Because if entrepreneurs are going to develop in Nigeria or Africa, that's a critical aspect. To turn it into a commodity, you need certain steps. And these steps are not affordable even to some talk less of startups. So is this something that you are looking at, like going beyond the existing certifications, involving the off-taker, the finance, and the people with action on ground to come up with certification, to come up with certain certification criteria that are easy, more affordable, and sustainable in the long run? And then there's the issue of financial institutions, especially in Nigeria and Africa, so to say, and even the central banks as well. If you look at most of the interventions that have gone in, have been focused more on the agro sector. Investors and financial, really making them understand, because there's a little understanding of this economy in Africa, and I would say it's even globally, it's an evolving economy. I always like to say that Nigeria and Africa is a blank sheet. Our misdevelopment or underdevelopment has turned from the disadvantage to an opportunity. So sometimes we need to get back to the default mode and actually work with this. It's a call for collaboration, I think. Working and looking at the real situation on ground and developing these processes so that we have a viable and sustainable industry.
That demands respond.
Yeah, it's a question and a comment.
Okay. He has made a comment, and he has. Your question is on certification.
There are three issues. Looking at the current certification,
yes.
And we're talking about working with entrepreneurs. Even for large institutions in Nigeria and Africa, it's not affordable, even for some in Europe.
Okay.
The investors looking at certain models which the food and beverages are adopting in terms of being involved in developing the value chain and supply of charges, so that they are even sure which is cheaper about the value, basically de-risking the greenwashing aspect of it. That is one question. Then the other question is looking at the institutions which are not ready, who do not understand. Because even if you go to the startups in Africa, there are a lot of programs going on about startups, but do they really understand the needs, to meet this criteria, to access this funding? So maybe it requires looking at Africa as a blank sheet, and developing certain methods, which are actually, as I mentioned, cheaper, in the long run, to actually create these natural assets, natural reserves to natural capital.
Thanks. I mobilized what I was doing in my previous job. I was supporting more the sustainable sourcing and sustainable value chain. But what I know is that some corporate, some trader now are also helping the producer organization to obtain those certification. So if some are interested by your cocoa, coffee, or I don't know what is produced, you can ask the off-taker to help to pay partly the certification, as far I know. But I think it's not really the role and the mandate of an investment fund to support those kind of costs for the commodity trading, I mean.
No, any response to
I just have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah. So with regards to challenges with involving entrepreneurs, with regards in setting up businesses and even their readiness, which is some of the limitations for us we have identified. Because like we said, the Great Green Wall Frontline is just not about planting trees. It's making sure people have the economic enterprises set up. And some of these challenges, like we would say, people are not capacitized to write. But now again, if we change the means of communication and making sure they are ready for this. And also, even government level, just yesterday we had this discussion. We would have, there's government allocations most of the time for these things, especially for the Great Green Wall. But then again, before the national budget is done, before the enterprises are set up for people to meet the qualifications, to even start the application. And then there's the issue of projects or businesses not even being ready. Because in Africa, you would realize that most of the businesses are at ideation stages. And then they would need a whole lot of skilled enterprise and development on them for them to actually be at that stage where they're even ready for this funding. So we hope by engaging the communities at these early stages, by co-creating with them, we're identifying, and also we're not just saying we're co-creating with the communities and we're going to take or fund all of the projects that come. That is not realistic. So, but we have to actually develop these to be at a scalable stage, because in entrepreneurship itself, you have the ideation stage, you have the entrepreneur stage, and of course you have the growth stage. So we have to make sure businesses are ready to be accelerated, to be ready for these funds, and some of the ways we want to involve, and why Civic has actually a very important role in this. I don't know if you have heard about Impact Hub, which is about 150 accelerator labs all over the world, and this is their only job, to actually develop businesses from the ideation stage to be scalable. And some of the channels we are actually looking at is how to work with specific groups like, let's say, the CSOs who have businesses, or the returnees, the migrants, they have an association and they have business. And of course, there is farmer markets, farmer associations in these communities already. So we're tapping into these channels, even though we're talking to the general public to create the awareness of the Great Green Wall, but we're now working with this specific group, and of course the women gardeners. And now we're doing things like entrepreneurship weekends, where it's not just a one-day training, 2 days training. I left town to go live in the North Bank. My team, we don't even have an office. We're in the North Bank. And in a day, sometimes we will go to all of the 7 districts in a day, because we have a van and we're mobile. So depending on the call, because this is the accessibility that the people need, and this is the understanding that people need to be able to do that co-creation with them. And I hope that answered some parts of your question.
So, thank you. A comment or a question?
It's interesting, and my follow-up question is to you. I come from, basically, on the Sahel myself. That's where I was born. I understand the issues. And you mentioned the limited success yourself from 2007 to date. And I find it, especially in my country, that sometimes our approaches are too sophisticated. For someone in the rural area, even some older people, have this apathy to technology. The moment you tell someone, fill a form, it's gone.
It's gone.
So probably, don't you think, is that how is the Great Green Wall authorities try to address the issue? If you look at my own corridor, which is about, I think, between from Borno to the whole of, from the northeast to the northwest, I don't think if you go and take a survey of actual people living on that lane, I don't think they've heard about the Great Green Wall. So what is the Great Green Wall Commission actually doing in terms of actually getting this message down? What is the approach? Is it from the entrepreneur at the top of it, going down, talking, actually going there? But he has his limitation, because most of this, the stretch has serious security issues. which is one of the biggest in Africa. So I think the GJW has to look at this another way in terms of having real action on ground.
Okay, thank you. We will continue the discussion even after but not before I have given you. You have been raising your hand, Mr. Chindaba.
Well done, presenters, my colleagues. From time to time, we have requests from Jeff or other agencies, development partners, for us to develop projects. And then the projects are normally to be supervised by a department in the ministry. Take, for instance, the Ministry of Environment, like Jeff is. After we develop the project, then there is a UN agency like FAO, which we are supposed to work hand in hand with. As the project is being developed, then the director in the department is supposed to oversee the implementation of that project. But the project will be taken by the UN agency and then being implemented without either monitoring and evaluation by the Ministry of Environment. And the reporting system, the government may know little or nothing about how far they have gone with that project. I want to maybe get clarification on that the UN implementing agency will just take over the execution of the project without the home government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you think it's one of the reasons that you can handle?
Maybe I can answer or try to give an answer. I also worked for years in evaluation. So I was an evaluator for economics ministries in various areas. And one of the problems is always you come too late, or the certification comes years later, or you have to send people on the ground. So it's very costly on the one hand and not timely. However, with the new technologies, which starts actually with a participatory approach, you have already the communities on the ground, you have the social aspects, you talk to the people, you are in communication with the people, because through the satellites and through the new communication technologies, you become aware actually of problems much quicker. And you can adjust them, you can steer them and say, well, what is the issue? Why are we not on track? And what can we do with it? How can we adjust it that we will become on track? So it's almost an ongoing evaluation. It's more a monitoring plus evaluation and in real time. And that is not only looking from the satellites images, what is going on, but also interpreting, making insights out of these images and out of these information. And it's not only images, it's also, as we said, the communication with the local people who are responsible for implementing things. And that is the most big advantages in my view. Costs are coming down immensely, and you have the time advantage that you get the information on time, almost in real time if you want to. And that is a huge step when it comes to evaluation, which is usually done years after the project is finished, and then you want to know what is the impact. No, with our new technologies, we have literally the impact on the day itself, and that's a huge advantage.
Thank you. So like I said, we'll continue the discussion even after the experts have lived here. If you have some personal questions, please, you can contact them. They're all here. So we want to thank you particularly. I would have run, anyway, we do the review after. Please, thank you very much. It has been a great day listening to you, and I believe that we have grasped what is there. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. So, there's a film that is going to be played so that before we move to the second panel discussion. Thank you.
Good job done.
Thank you.
The Great Green Wall is one of the most ambitious initiatives on the globe to bring life back to isolated villages in Africa's most degraded landscapes. It is about creating a strip of vegetation of 8,000 kilometers. Launched 2007, the Great Green Wall has faced many obstacles to accomplish the goal of being an effective barrier against desertification and improving the living condition of people inhabiting these areas. An 18 million hectares of degraded lands have been restored and 350,000 jobs created. This achievement only represents 4% of the original goal. In January of 2021, at the One Planet Summit, the international cooperation community pledged $19 billion to speed up this initiative. Its main goals were to boost government's actions and improve coordination and monitoring capacities of all parties involved in the implementation of the Great Green Wall. The Great Green Wall Accelerator Initiative has created a new finance climate, offering new opportunities to scale up investment on the ground. To meet these opportunities, in July 2021 was created the Collective, a network of 9 European digital and space companies. The institution coordinator is Promethe, a French new space operator of nano-satellites constellations for Earth observation.
Which is a young startup created in 2020 that is working to deploy by 2024, 2025, a constellation of nanosatellites of new generation, embarking very high-resolution cameras, in particular hyperspectral, that will allow any user to access a target several times a day, which is a breakthrough in the space industry.
The collective offers now a digital platform to monitor crops, forests, wetlands, and detect events such as fires, deforestation, floods, drought, pollutions, or lack of irrigation.
In vast and isolated regions with scattered sedentary farmers around water spots and nomadic shepherds moving between grazing areas, to account with satellite technologies to scan territory events, is essential. The resolution of satellite cameras are so high that they can even record a cow in a herd. This technology is so advanced that parameters such as the health of plants, soil moisture, and land surface temperature can be collected via Promethe satellite sensors. In these remote regions, it also can help to connect all program parties, from village to headquarters. This capacity, among other advantages, ensure the total traceability of all project phases, allowing stakeholders to have a comprehensive knowledge of what is happening on the ground and be alert on potential problems.
And with the idea of the satellite issue, people will be scared to destroy what we are trying to resuscitate. People will not do such again because they know they are being monitored. The areas are being monitored from somewhere. So knowing fully that the project is being monitored, nobody will want to be a culprit.
So for us, there's ways to go about it, and technology have been the biggest solution to all challenges we have as mankind, and we're also taking on that. That's our biggest advantage, and one of the few things we're doing on the ground is how to use satellite mapping to be able to be able to maneuver and get access to these places, and even be able to track progress when we start activities on the ground, like the tree planting, where the applications is going to show you the biodiversity rate before and after the planting, and even the increase in the animal species there, and the soil topography, etc., etc.
The collective also facilitates the community involvement by providing technology and management services. Complementary, the collective make available to investors a complete guide of financial opportunities, investment plans, and detailed information about the project's anticipated benefits and financial returns.
The most important activity in this context is to support the creation of a sustainable business plan for the local communities, incorporating public and private money. Creating recurring revenues in a sustainable fashion for the local population is the best foundation for a successful project.
Obviously, Great Green Wall initiative is a unique and once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity for investors to first leverage bankable and sustainable blended finance projects, two, to contribute to a shift toward more sustainable and resilient agricultural practices, three, to partner with official institutions and get positive visibility among the communities they serve.
The collective's approach is already implemented and validated in a vast initiative called the LDN Project, located in southwestern Nigeria. This is a $500 million program aimed at recuperating almost 110,000 hectares of degraded land. The program seeks to reforest most of these land and improve the living conditions of its inhabitants. LDN will be the largest organic agroforestry farm of the African continent. The collective have been supporting this program by facilitating local communities' participation,
contributing to strengthening project management with multiple tools has a great impact on local communities. It strengthens social networks, health and education, and works on support the conservation of cultural richness and establishing a framework of resilience that leads to more efficient financial support in the long term.
The collective also has provided satellite information to evaluate settlement conditions, crop selection, and land use alternatives. Also, it has helped to set up a business plan that allowed the project become a bankable investment opportunity.
Land restoration project is a project that needs the participation of everybody, both the private and the public sector. The private sector stands to gain very well because restoration project is a long-term project and is what the world is going through now, what is called the green project. It's really a project that gives profit, long-term profit.
Look Collective is a new cooperation model that integrated advanced space technology, high data processing capacity, and a strong financial management assistance to support governments and communities. It is a committed initiative that can make the difference in the context of the Great Green Wall, but also in other regions confronting similar challenges.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. we move straight to the second panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dikwa. Suleiman Dikwa will be moderating. And we have 3 panelists who are, please, Olivia. Is it, what's the name again? Sorry. You didn't write it for me. The panelists should be over here. Thank you. Hello? Are they okay? I'm not sure. Okay. So she can answer the baraka. Say about the most what we are going to talk about.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, one more. My name is Suleiman Dikwa. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and my company. Then the panelists will tell you a little bit about who they are or what they do. Then we'll take it up from there. As I said earlier, the name of my company is Green Sahara Farms Limited. It's a social impact investment company formed about 15 years ago. And 15 years ago, we made a commitment that for every venture we go into, it must make social and economic sense. As the name implies, it's a play on words. I come from very close to the Sahara. I very much live the impacts of climate change. So we made a vow for the almost impossible, but now seems very possible, tasks of greening Sahara. In the last 2 decades, we've worked in various communities around Nigeria. We're in about 7 states, working with rural communities, having real action on ground. We've continued to develop social enterprise in the sense that developing the green economy by actually developing entrepreneurs, young people especially, who are able to appreciate the action they need to take to reverse the land degradation and other aspects of that actually deplete our environment. As of last year, we've done the largest tree planting campaign in Nigeria in over 5 decades. We planted about 250,000 trees. This year, we developed the largest nursery system, probably in Africa, with about 2 million trees in nursery, with a capacity for 5 million trees, with about 1,000 jobs created. This year, with other partners, we are going to plant about 2 million trees, and in the next 5 years, under the Green Tree Thrift, where we intend to, there's the next plant about 25 million trees. We've commenced discussions with entities in Africa, which has always been my submission, that companies from around the world and investors come in to take our airports, our roads, and all that. So what about, in Nigeria, we have 9 million hectares of government gazetted reserves. We should attract investment to those reserves and turn them to natural capital. Thank you very much. I'll allow the panelists to introduce themselves and what they do, then we take it up from there.
Good afternoon. My name is Olivier Pieps. Donc I am the founder and president of Prométhée. You have seen, we are coordinator of the collective project. And I'm here a little bit, I'm a strange animal because I'm part of industry and of course linked to entrepreneurship.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heinrich Paulsen. I am the founder of the company Terrestris, a geoinformatics business from Bonn, Germany. And a geoinformatics business actually deals in spatial data So we take the data and we turn that into actionable information. And secondly, in 2014, I helped found another company called Mundialis, which is dedicated to the analysis of remote sensing data. And you heard about the importance of satellite data. I would like to point out that the European Commission in 2014 initiated the so-called Copernicus program, which means they sent up hundreds and millions of dollars worth of satellites into space, and they are making all this data available for free for everybody. And this, because I'm a geographer by trade, induced me to actually set up the second company, because from my point of view, this is also geodata, and this fits perfectly into the information systems that we build. And I would also like to point out that the two companies that I helped to set up, we are specialized in free and open source software. So everything that we build, the source code we make available to everybody, to the global community. And obviously, we do not program everything ourselves, but we build on the work done by others, and we improve that, and we give it back to the community. And this is also the basis for others to adopt ownership of the work that we are doing. And later on, I'm happy to tell you more about the projects that we're doing with regard to the topic that we're speaking about here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am Olivier Kergal. I am representing an engineering office specialized in climate engineering. We are based in Côte d'Ivoire, in Abidjan. And we are mainly involved in forest management plan and all types of forestry projects. We also manage and work in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency.
Thank you. I would like maybe you take it one at a time. You all play in different areas, from entrepreneurship, the technology itself, its application, and the policy sector of this segment. How, from the entrepreneurship perspective, from your own experience as an entrepreneur, first, if you can wear that cap, how do you correlate your situation being as a startup? Because I feel this is very important information in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and how you can correlate with working in places such as Nigeria.
We can talk about Nigeria, but all Africa, of course. Yeah. Now, what I would say that I can say that one day I had a dream, and this dream really was to develop capabilities, tools, space tools, to be able to serve local communities. Alors, Prométhée, it's really an operator or space constellation operator. And we will bring the first European constellation in Earth observation in two main fields, what we call environmental intelligence and strategic intelligence. It goes from, okay, some examples were shown, waste management, water management, illegal fishing, land degradation monitoring, carbon sequestration. And the number of examples is really important, but okay, the question is, what's new? Because of course, all of you talk about satellites and satellite imaging. Alors, what's new? First, the important term new is linked to new space. In fact, we are connected to new space. What is new space? Is the result of miniaturization of technology, hybridization of digital feature, and a very strong decrease of the cost of putting in orbit kilos. And the result of that is that we were able to open, I would say, the sky to small company, agile company, which can bring very quickly solution with really strong decreases of costs. And the idea is really to have the possibility to democratize the use of Earth observation. And what I would say, that's one thing. The second thing is, because the cost decrease, as you know, in aerospace, cost is linked to weight. You decrease with miniaturization the weight by a factor of 50, and then you decrease the cost of such a factor, which gives the opportunity to go from one big satellite, two big satellites, to 20, 30, 50 satellites. Alors why to have 50 satellites? 50 satellites will allow you to pass from images, knowing images, to behaviors. You will be able to discover what's happened. You will create dynamic. And I think in many discussions I follow the last days, where you talk about origins, about traceability, which is so fundamental. In fact, to make the difference, you need to follow things. You need to follow working sites, what's happening in the working sites, to be sure that one tree, from where is coming this tree. And you need, in fact, this dynamic. And that's really the revolution you can get from now, since not a lot of time, because it will be the first big European Earth observation constellation, this kind of tool. And okay, we talk about cocoa harvest, follow cocoa harvest is fundamental, where it's come, when it's done. You could bring files and explaining hours by hours of things evolve on the ground and prove, and begin to prove and certify. Of course, we heard about problem of health of culture and trees, because there is a lack of monitoring. If you have automatic monitoring of cultures and detect that something is wrong and bring alerts, it will be a fantastic help. We talk about more social but very critical social problem like shepherd and farmers relationship, to be able to manage the roads, to protect fields, and to manage also how to share water together in intelligence, and that's something we can change really the situation in some country. And my last example is, of course, grain green wool, that's the subject of today. Traceability, donators, since 10 years they give a lot, and it's difficult for them to realize what was the impact. And if we can really follow what's happened, show, illustrate, and demonstrate that the money is used, and follow almost hours by hours progress on the field, you will really remotivate donators, and I think it's a very important asset. To finish, one technology aboard, it was just a word was there, was hyperspectral. Hyperspectral is a totally new technology, already on board on some drones, but in satellite it's totally new, which allow from space to characterize matter from space. Then you can see from space what kind of crop it is. From space you can see the essence of a tree. And then again, for traceability, what you can do with this kind of information is enormous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very revealing. Mr. Paulson, you've spoken about the open source application, development of satellites, accessibility. He has spoken about the monitoring aspect of it. Most of the places where this land degradation occurred are some of the poorest people in the world. And countries like Nigeria and other countries over the last 6-7 decades have always tried to enable, let's say, the rural dweller or the smallholder farmer to actually have some of security, or I should call it collateral, an asset, so to say. And most of them, the most assets they have tend to be a few animals and probably a store of little bags of granary. So how does this technology actually, how do you improve access, and how does it move beyond monitoring and goes to creation of a collateral which in my own opinion, will be what will actually protect and nurture these trees. Right time I have 1,000 trees and remotely monitored and is tied to my identity. Is that something that it's in the works, or is that something that still exists in what it already exists in what you're doing?
Well, this is a very interesting question. Basically, the satellites are producing data, and the data that needs to be turned into actionable information. So the assets of the smallholder farmers, on the one hand, you can observe them from space, and you can turn the images or the spectral information into maps, and humans are visual animals, so maps are very easy to understand. So even people who are not literate will easily be able to understand such a picture of the ground. And if you are then, and this will be possible with the satellite data already available, plus what Olivier just mentioned about the hyperspectral data, even more so, that you can locate different aspects. You can locate the trees, you can locate the animals, and if you put all this into an information system, and you can then link the identity, for example, through blockchain to the individual person, you will be able to create this transparency and the linkage between the asset on the ground and the person, while making it very difficult to manipulate this. And this will give the trust and the confidence to the people who are investing in these projects, while at the same time giving the individual, the herder, the shepherd, the smallholder farmer, the security that the assets that belong to this person, that they're protected. And the modern information systems are able to do that. And obviously there are terabytes per day being sent down to Earth, and all of this data needs to be managed. But since it's all digital, since we're connected through the internet, for example, it is easily manageable, not only in Nigeria, or before the minister talked about the 4 million hectares that are obviously not all collocated in one area, but they're dispersed around the country. And all of this, together with the other countries, you have neighboring countries where you have similar problems, where you interact with others through watersheds that are not bound to political boundaries, for example, where it's absolutely necessary that you talk to your neighbors. And all of this is possible through the technology that we have at our disposal and that we can bring to the projects that we want to do in the context of the Great Green Wall.
I have maybe a quick comment to add. Its inalterability is fundamental. When you talk about traceability, but for example, cadastre, we are talking with lawyers. The idea is to do cadastre, mining cadastre and city cadastre, which is a very important point. And it's really important that the information you get, you can secure back blockchain, that from the camera up to the guy who will use it, no one could touch it, change it. And that's something very important. And this kind of research will be very useful for traceability about, you know, culture, tree, cocoa, etc. The second point is, if you believe that you have one sensor who will give you the information, it's never worked like that. The philosophy is that, okay, satellites, sensors are just commodities. What is really important, it's a global system where you will get information from 5, 6, 7 different sources, different constellations, different satellites, in situ data, people in the community. And it's a mix of all of that who will give you a reinforce, a really important information. And the last thing is that all the system must be controlled locally. It's not something coming from France, from the US, etc. The idea, that's really important, that the global system will be mastered by, I would say, in Africa, African Community Organization, UA, or CDO, or one country. We discuss already with more than 7 African countries, very interested by this kind of solution. And it's important that you will have a full sovereignty, and you will control that yourself. That's something important in the project, autonomy.
Thank you very much. I think he has added something, the issue of sovereignty, ownership, and all that. Probably before I go to the next panelist, from my own perspective, since the introduction of probably electricity in Africa, for what the gentlemen have said, and what I perceive, it's something that is going to bring something new. It's specific, it's measurable, it's accessible, and it's clear. There's no ambiguity. And unlike electricity, the lights won't go out, right? You will still have access to these assets. So, Mr. Olivier, you've worked with a lot of individuals, communities around here. I would like to ask this question. How do you see the usefulness from what the gentlemen have spoken about? Do you think this is something very useful for the African economy? And if it is useful, what ways, what investments locally now from the outside investment in terms of what we put in, the quantum of money we put in development of agriculture by African governments, maybe misdirected, we'll see at this point in time, because it has led us to this land degradation, reduction in terms of yield from our resources. So how will you look at the both and the usefulness on one side, and at the same time talking to Africa in terms of reimagining this approach to food security and sustainable land use? Maybe.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for my English is really poor, so sometimes I'm not sure of what is your question. But my understanding is those kind of technologies could provide a very helpful vision to manage and to monitor what is on the ground. Because one of the main problems we are facing right now, for example, in Côte d'Ivoire, in the forêt classée, in these areas, it's the immigration which is not managed, which is not really how do you say that? There is a lot of people incoming in the forest, and we have not the management of these areas. They are destroying. So such projects could help the authorities in managing day by day the front of destruction of the forest. This is one point to control the organization. In the second term, we can also say that those kind of technology can provide a vision of how agroforestry can recover some forest coverage, because a lot of projects are already on the ground, but we cannot evaluate them on the right way. So those kind of technology can provide us day by day some very helpful informations to reorganize or to reorient the politics on the ground.
Thank you very much. Just as my final question to the panel is this, you can have your comments. You know, we've worked, from traceability has been a big play in terms of a food and agro industry all the time. And now there's thinking that it should go beyond traceability to transparency, which I think transparency, which this technology actually provides. Then there's the issue of cryptocurrency, which has caught up big in Africa, which we know how it's mined. It's basically numbers being crunched and do that. So is there a possibility of, with transparency, historically Africa started using, the means of exchange was barter. So we are going back now to the roots where these people are rural areas. So is there a possibility that we can transition from using the satellite new space technology, using this from moving from assets actually as a means to bring in that means of exchange beyond the off-taker, because you're talking about an open source system, down to the rural guy in the rural community, which, so to say, has now a currency he can trade. Within an open source system, will that smallholder farm, will he have the independence to use those units of carbon or whatever green unit he has as a means of exchange?
I repeat, if you see, the famous don't look up, look down. If you see, you know. If you know, you can begin to act. I think that we talk about traceability. From traceability, we go to transparency and really trust with technology like blockchain, what we explained just before. Of course, with satellites, if you are in your bad or crypto money, we don't help to wash you. I would say we cannot do everything with satellite. There are limits. But I think that if you see 80% of the project is digital. In fact, what we do, putting such tools in a country, we talk a lot with Nigeria. In fact, we help for, I would say, the digital transformation and revolution. And you can bring in the community with antenna and systema and teach the people. We can bring the learning clouds, artificial intelligence, all this kind of technology which are key for the development of a region. If you don't know that, if you don't do nothing about that, you will out of the big business. And then I think it's really a strong impact on community, on future of community. Just a comment, Prométhée and Afria, we organize courses all around Africa about artificial intelligence in space. And we had a courses here, I think 2 months ago, something like that. We had in Benin, we had it already in 6 countries, because we believe that space and digital capability bring much more than image, because we go from images to smart data, from smart data to service, to democracy, and to transparency, and to growth and evolution of all a nation. That's a little bit of vision.
Maybe if I can quickly add to that, I earlier said that all the systems that we build are based on free and open source software. Now, I believe that this is the prerequisite for anybody to understand and to adopt ownership. And by adopting ownership, I mean that you really understand it's your data, it's your information, it's your community that you're trying to improve. And maybe the illiterate shepherd is not the ideal point to start. But my experience on the African continent is that there is a huge, young, very well-educated population which absolutely have the capacity to understand these systems, manage these systems, and provide services for their community. And like Olivier said earlier, obviously it's a global system that we tap into. We all tap into that, and the African continent can do the same. And the solutions that we are providing really facilitate that. And at the same time, and this is why I'm so very happy to be here, and in the context of the collective,
we are only a very small part and only a small cog in the big machinery, that we are connected to the financial experts, that we're connected to the people who actually build the satellites, that we're connected to the social organizations who are working on the ground together with the communities, something that we as an organization cannot do, but being part of le collectif in this case, I think we can bring real value to Africa. Thanks.
We're open now to having questions. If you have any questions or comments for the panelists, please feel free to do so.
I would just like to, my comment would be just to applaud the initiative because it has shown us just how far the difference that technology could bring to us. I'm an advocate of STEM technology, and especially in the way that is applicable in the communities. And most especially when it comes to satellite technology, there have been a lot of restrictions surrounding it, especially in our subcontinent here. I could give you an example. For instance, in the Gambia, satellite internet is banned by the government because, as you guys must have known, we had a dictatorship regime, so that liberality it brought. And then during the previous past 2 years, we've been facing internet blackouts very frequently. For instance, twice in a month, which actually affects a lot of economic ventures in the country. And then there was just one company or one office that had access to internet, and they were using satellite technology. So this really could show you, if we tap into these potentials, how much of a difference it could make. And on the video, I saw the chief applauding the initiative. So getting local people to be really involved in it speaks a lot to us, especially as young people. And I think it also brings a lot of awareness to tap into that capacity for young people to have more career opportunities on the ground, especially in satellite technology. So congratulations on the initiative. Thank you.
Hello. I have a question. The free software applications and the secured one, how can it be accessed to manage data?
I didn't get the question. Maybe you could. Basically the free and open source software is residing in repositories on the internet. So maybe if you are not looking into space technology, but word processing. Most people know Microsoft Word, for example, and there is an open source alternative called LibreOffice. So you go on the internet and you download LibreOffice, which is basically the open source equivalent to the Microsoft Word package. Now, the software that we deal in, it is very specialized software to manage spatial data. And I won't go into the details, but basically there are also repositories on the internet, and everybody is enabled to download this software, to install it on their computer, to look into the source code, to change the source code if they are technically capable. Obviously, also, if you're not technically capable, you could change that and try and run it, and it won't work, which will then not corrupt the repository that you downloaded it from, because there are mechanisms in place to ensure that the software cannot be corrupted. And this is basically how you can set up a server or the cloud with all the required components for whatever you wish to do.
And maybe the idea is really to bring a system I would say is a system like you get, I will use same kind of analogy. You get your laptop, and you have Word, Excel, and you can work alone, and you have all the program to build everything you want. And we can exchange, cooperate, because the idea is to build in parallel of the system, is to build an ecosystem in the country. And if you want to be connected, it's like you put internet to your computer. Donc you get the system, embedded system, you can develop and you can exchange with the entire world because it's a collaborative approach. And that's something important. The way we work, it's open source and collaborative approach where you can get free software, but some people will work and develop things, and of course it will have cost also, but it's like an open platform that you will own, that you will master, that you can develop, and that's, okay, a tool where you can associate autonomy. If you cannot do that, you are not autonomous. You're sure that you control the system, you control your data, you can develop your people.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This sounds very interesting, and perhaps what I'm going to ask you have already discussed it. But I would like to know, with respect to the issues of land restoration which you are talking about, where has this technology been applied, either in Latin America or in Asia or even Europe or a specific country, and give us how you went around getting the system working?
Okay. The collective is young, the company is young. We are supported by the French government, Space Agency, the European Space Agency, French Space Agency, and European Space Agency. The program is simple. We are programming, and we have all the software to work with and to be connected with satellites. For our own constellation, the first fly is planned next year, and from that we will build the full constellation and get a constellation to offer services. And then the idea is when we have our constellation or in parallel, when everything is developed, we can duplicate the system, which means that today we discuss, we have product, but the first satellites and the system will begin to be effective only next year. But today we are in discussion with 15 countries in Latin America, countries in Africa, but we were quite surprised by the fact that Middle East country contact us. Because we believe that, I don't know, Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia has money to buy everything, are very connected to the US, don't say we are not directly, and in fact, they are really interested to get their autonomy because a lot of systems are in the US and they want to get their own system with the data home, with mastering the software, mastering how they can work with it, and developing an ecosystem, or digital, or on the platform, or on everything. And they are very interested to this ecosystem. What they don't get, and they don't get any sovereignty. As you know, even in France, we have a full support of French government because we realize that for Ukraine, that all the information we get, dynamic information to understand behavior and to take political decision, you have to understand behavior. We have American satellites. Because we have French satellites, but we have image. We don't have this global system. And we realize that they are very interested to get that now. Then French will develop it, and it's where we are today, in discussion with many countries, with already some countries around the table who signed some agreement and will to develop collaboration to get a full system themselves, or to get access to data, or some big African organization who would be interested also to get a system. Because if you have such a system, you master your country in many, many, many aspects, but also you have a vision at the regional level. You begin to be a real regional player on all the aspects we discuss.
If there are no more questions, with this, I think we'll round up now. I think a big round of applause for the finalists. To run a summary, I think going by the topic of the session, we're talking about new space and new opportunities. Most of the application of space technology in Africa has been limited to certain overall country objectives. But here we have a technology that is actually looking at the bottom of the pyramid. And we have a majority of the poor people in Africa, especially in my country. There are more than 80 million smallholder farmers, and about 70% of the 200 million live in these rural areas. And these are the most, we are one of the most degraded lands in the world, going about the last data, which is years ago, was about 15%. But you don't have to go far to think of it in terms of Nigeria, when more than 100 million people use firewood to cook. So you can imagine how much firewood gets wasted. So on the policy makers is to basically look at this approach, this new application of technology in this new space for the better, because in my own opinion, with the little I know, if fully applied, it has the potential to change the landscape of Africa, because for the first time, land resource that is going to come back from Africa is not going to be depletion of resources, rather enhancement of resources that we have in Africa, which the other way has been our history for the last 100, 200 years. In terms of some countries in Africa, like my country, do have satellites. She's spoken about access to internet, which is important, and we know what happens to the BTS, what the kind of technology that has been deployed to have access to the internet. The satellite now provides more wider reach, and basically, to an extent, almost zero interruption or minimal interruption in terms of services. So it is a great new opportunity, a new space, a new thinking, a new approach, and I pray that our leaders, policymakers, and developed agencies will support such initiatives so that in the next 5, 10 to 15 years, we have a new economy, and we have an opportunity as Africa to actually lead this sustainable development and utilization of resources. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you, panelists, for having you. I hope you have a great evening all. Thank you.
Okay, so we are reaching to the end of this side event. So I would invite our colleague from Maxime Thibon from the UNCCD to give us some little feedback on the subject, and then we will end up with a concluding remarks from the Nigerian perspective.
Yes, so these are not closing remarks, but it was just like maybe my feeling, about what has been said, So thanks a lot to the panelists. It was very interesting, and thanks for the invitation, Ali. I would say that this session, for me, remind me a lot of issues that has been discussed the last few days, regarding the green wall. And one key word, is coming back all the time is bankable project. We have this issue when we are discussing with technical partner, financial partner. We have this issue we are talking with national agency. We have this issue when we are talking with UNCCD focal point. And for me, what I have seen today, blended finance tools, use of new technology such as like new space, this idea of certification, traceability, we can relate it to maybe some kind of vegetal or vegetal product blockchain, is very important for each activity we try to do within the accelerator of the Green Wall with the Pan-African Agency, both for project design, it's important, and also for implementation, but this is something that is sometimes more reliable to do with some local community or technical services, and monitoring and evaluation. And so we have like this request from the technical partner, to really have, this bankable project. And I really think, that this is a clear need for the country. And what I've seen, it wasn't so much expressed, in the movie, but like the example of Ile d'Otoum is clear something that should be showcased, So I understand the project is ongoing, but I understood also that there is like a long-term process, to have like a real baseline between all the actors with multi-participatory approaches, question regarding the tenure or governance, so baseline on land degradation drivers. So this is something that is like, that should be promoted, to all people in the country that are in charge of land restoration. So UNCCD focal point, but also thinking about like CBD focal point and climate change focal point. And for sure, the National Agency for the Green Wall. So I don't know, you mentioned that you were in touch with several African countries, so it's wonderful, but we have also to consider which people, in this country. Should be Ministry of Agriculture, should be Ministry in charge of livestock, people in charge of environment. Sometimes they are like not working very well all together. This is also something we try to do within the Green Wall Accelerator with the Pan-African Agency, to gather all these people, we say like around like national coalition, to have like an intersectorial, interministerial approach, And when you have like this multi-stakeholder, multi-ministerial approach, you are like in better position to negotiate with the Ministry of Finance, with different financial actors, both private and public. So my conclusion was we just use these Ile d'Otoum approaches. I'm sure like Nigeria, they are like chairing the Pan-African Agency right now. So I'm sure like in the coming weeks we will have some meeting where this example could be showcased, and could be promoted to all the other Green Wall agencies. So that was enough for me. Thanks a lot, Alain.
Right, thank you very much, Maxime. We'll follow up on that.
So we want to thank you all for participating in this site event, of which we had 2 panel discussions. The first discussed on ways of having investment or bankable investment in terms of restoration, where we had experts on restoration, we have experts on financing, and we have experts on project development. And we all heard what they have for us. The second panel discussed on the tools for tracing progress of restoration. We have heard that unlike days past where satellites are costly, out of reach of the common man or even nations, that we have now simpler, cheaper satellites, and we have sources that are free to get data and to interpret, and that traceability is possible even to the rural farmer, and that also there is the window of training the young African population to be able, or in artificial intelligence. So our take home will be that yes, there are funds out there for restoration, and that there are experts out there that can be able to develop proposals for these projects of restoration. And also, it's possible to trace progress for donors and partners to be addressed, to know that yes, whatever is being reported that is being done in the field is actually the way it is. Because the satellite will not give you lies. So that will be our take home. And Nigeria is glad and happy for this site event. We hope that when next we come with another site event, which will be in the class of this one, we will have you there. So on behalf of my director, who is the focal point for UNCCD for Nigeria, who has represented our Minister for Environment, I would like to thank all of you and then wish you safe journey when this conference is over. Thank you, and thank you again.